Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Dubrow Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Orange County Season 16 Reunions Part 1 and Part 2. So, let me just start off by saying that while this was a solid season, this reunion did not give what the girls said it was supposed to have gave, in the words of Rolling Ray. It definitely fell flat. There were some questions that I thought were not asked. I just was not too pleased with it. Fashion-wise, I wasn't in love with anybody's look. I thought that Shannon looked the best to me. I love that color. I like the dress. Her hair in those waves. She looked really good. But Gina definitely looked her absolute best. That was the best outfit I've ever seen her in. The makeup was done. I said, okay, finally. Everybody else, I wasn't too much feeling. Noella looked nice. Emily, I don't know what she had on. Dr. Jen, you just completely missed the mark. And Heather, with all the money that you have, that was a complete flop. And while I love that Van Cleef and Arpels necklace that you had on, even that couldn't save the look. But y'all, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so let's just jump right on into this recap because we don't have a minute to spare. We start off this first part of the reunion with them discussing Heather Dubrow's return back onto the OC. So now Andy reads a viewer's question asking Heather how did she feel when her two daughters came out to her. So Heather starts crying. She's talking about how touched she was because her kids were so open and honest with her and how she's incredibly proud of them. So now Andy jumps in and tells about his coming out story and how his mom was emotional and how she was grieving the life that she thought that he would never have because she didn't think that he would be able to have kids. So now Andy goes on to ask Heather if she felt the same way, like was she grieving a life, that her kids wouldn't have. Heather says absolutely not. Now, while Heather used to be a favorite of mine, but then she really just left a sour taste in my mouth, I will say that I thought it was beautiful seeing how supportive she is of her children. And now Andy moves off of that and he brings up Heather and Terry's marriage, how when they were on the show, we saw when they had some issues. We see an old clip of Terry saying that he had thrown out the word divorce. And Heather says that they've navigated the waters of marriage and they're doing better than ever. Then she goes on to say that they've avoided the reality TV curse. Now, I don't really believe in the reality TV curse when it comes to marriages or friendships. I just think that things were already on shaky ground, and then bringing a camera in front of that is going to exacerbate the issues. If you already have a bad marriage, see Dr. Jen and Ryan, getting on a show is not going to make things better. I do think that a lot of these husbands become insecure and they feel a type of way if they were the breadwinner, if they were the ones with the power and the notoriety, and now their wife becomes famous and a household name in her own right, then that power dynamic sort of shifts. And if there were already other problems, now on top of that, it's a recipe for disaster. But I do feel like Terry and Heather are very calculated people, and their marriage is a part of their brand, so I really don't see them breaking up. Now we switch gears and move on over to Noella. You guys know how I felt about Noella all season long. I tried to give her a chance, but she wore and grated on my nerves immediately after. This reunion did not help things. I was staring at my TV like, is this girl insane? Like, does she hear herself? But anyhow, we see the footage roll of all that she endured and went through this entire season. And Andy starts it off by asking her about the divorce. And he wants to know, how did she and her ex-husband James meet? So we find out that Noella was on Seeking Arrangements, and that's how she and James met. And she goes on to say that they were together for 6 years, they were together for 5 years, and then legally married for 1 year. So while she's talking, Emily keeps interrupting And she's throwing in some jabs because remember that James was legally married while he was seeing Noella for all this time. So Noella clears it up and says that James was separated, which means he was still legally married when they were dating. I'm like, Noella, let's think about this for a minute. Any man who has that low of character to still be legally married while he's seeing you, do you really think that he would be a great husband to you? Like, let's use our heads here. Then Noella makes a comment saying that she didn't care about the money. So now Andy interrupts her and he's like, well, obviously you cared about the money because you were on a site that's for sugar babies looking for wealthy men. And it's like, Noella, you don't have to lie. You were on Seeking Arrangements for a reason. Like, you're not on Seeking Arrangements to get with a broke man. And that's okay. Like, girl, I get it.
Bling, bling, bling. Bitches is mad.
I wouldn't be on that site for a broke man either. Well, I'm not going to be on any site for a broke man. Let's start there. But I don't understand why you feel the need to lie. She was bragging in the first episode about how they had all these vacation homes. They had this gorgeous 10,000 square foot home. She was always shopping. They flew private everywhere. So you loved the lifestyle. So why deny that? You weren't this woman who was just okay living a simple life. And that's okay. So while Noella is going on talking in circles, Andy interrupts her and he says, well, your ex-husband maintains that you were going to file for separation first. So now before Noella can answer, Emily keeps interrupting because remember that Emily is a lawyer as well. So she's like, yeah, it was a race to see which one of them could have gotten jurisdiction first. I was like, Emily, nobody's asking you for legal advice. When I tell you that Emily's desperation to have a moment, this entire reunion was so embarrassing to watch, I was like, girl, wait until Andy calls on you. Emily's so freaking desperate. It's just so annoying. Like I said, her and Gina are the epitome of two desperados. Now here's where Noella starts talking in circles yet again. Andy wants to know if her ex-husband James wanted to be on reality TV in the first place. So she's like, yeah, he loved it. He wanted it so bad. So now Andy says, well, that's not what he's telling us. He maintains that it was you who wanted to be on TV and be famous, and you were all in and he wasn't. So Noella fixes her lips to say that if he ever told her that he didn't want to be on there, she wouldn't have done it. Everybody, including Andy, is looking at her like, girl, you know you a damn lie, because as fame hungry as Noella is, it is written all over her face that she has always wanted to be on TV. And the way Andy kept clearing her, he was like, well, Noella, we did approach you about joining the show a few years back and you were down with it. So I really don't believe, you saying that you wouldn't have ever joined this show if he wasn't comfortable with it. So she's like, yeah, I mean, James was chartering the plane when you guys had called me like a few years back because he wanted me to have the best possible light being on the show. And it was like, okay, so why are you now saying that you wouldn't have done the show if he didn't want you to join the show? It's clear that you were chomping at the bit to be on OC. The Real Housewives franchise is the hottest ticket in town. You have people who haven't been on TV in ages reviving dead careers, now finally being in the spotlight yet again, making good money. Everybody and their mother wants to be on the show because the opportunities are endless, the fame, the money, the travel. Please, you're not fooling anybody. So now Emily cuts in yet again and she's like, okay, Noella, like it's enough already, okay? You were like, screw you, I'm gonna be famous, I'm going all in, I don't care how you feel. I'm like, again, Emily, I feel the same way too about Noella in regards to her pursuit of fame. But this is her segment. It's not yours. Stop interrupting her. Again, stop being so desperate for a moment. If I were Andy, I would have told Emily, girl, I'm going to need you to pipe down. I'm the host. I sign your checks. I don't need you doing your job for me. Be quiet I'll talk to you when I get to you, but we're talking about Noella right now, so be quiet. So since Shannon is the only one in the group who's close to Noella, she stands up for Noella and she's like, it's hard for me to sit here and listen to other people tell Noella how she thinks and feels. Like, lay off of her. Now we find out that Noella has a new boyfriend named Bobby. Child, I don't have too much to say about that. He bought her some adult toy company called Playland, so she was excited and all giddy about that. Then she starts talking about how her stack of vagina days are over. Andy wants clarification on what that all entailed. Everybody is confused. They're like, so wait, did James have sex with you and the other two women? Was it just you three having sex and he just watched? Like, what happened? She's not clear about what it is either. And I'm like, Noella, when it comes to you, the story always seems to change. You can't keep any story straight. Now we get to the Heather and Shannon beef. Definitely one of the best parts of this reunion, but my blood was boiling because, like I said, Heather, you tried it. And the things that were coming out of your mouth to Shannon were evil. And if I were Shannon, I would never speak to you again. But anyhow, Andy wants to know off rip, Heather, what did you do with that $30,000 worth of Nobu sushi that didn't get eaten? So Heather's like, oh, it didn't go to waste, okay? Like, a few people were still there, and we sent them all away with doggy bags. I said, that is, and you know it. But I seriously doubt that Noella, Dr. Jen, and a few other people who were there took home all that food. A lot of that food went to waste, okay? They probably took home the equivalent of maybe $5,000 worth of food, but it wasn't the full $30,000. So now Andy reads a viewer question directed towards Shannon, and they're asking Shannon, why did she feel the need to bring up the lawsuit to Gina and Emily? So Shannon says, I just brought it up because I was wondering if this was the same girl I knew from, 20 years ago, because I didn't think that she would be friends with Heather. So you know how friends talk. It's like, oh my gosh, there was this girl back in the day who, sued Terry. I wonder if it's the same girl. Friends talk. I don't think that Shannon was doing it to be malicious. But talking or saying anything to Gina or Emily, Dumb and Dumber, is always a big mistake because they're always looking to twist your words and to start trouble. And that's exactly what they did. So Shannon keeps reiterating that she was just hoping that this wasn't the same Nicole that she knew from years back. So now Heather says, this was 20 years ago, like who cares? I said, Heather, don't say it was 20 years ago, who cares? Because if you were so cavalier about the lawsuit, you wouldn't have freaked out so badly demanding that the cameras be shut off. So now Shannon goes on to say that Gina kept bugging her to tell Heather when they were at Javier's. And we know how Gina is. She lives and thrives off of mess, chaos, strife, and confusion. So she was all too eager for Shannon to bring this up on camera. So of course, Emily has to get nasty and she's like, Shannon, did you honestly think that this news was never going to come out? And you telling me and Gina, you pulled the pin out of the grenade and you gave it to the both of us. I was like, that analogy didn't even make any sense, you idiot. Second of all, Emily, Heather and Shannon have known each other for a long time. You only met Heather through Shannon. You and Gina had no right to say anything to Heather about the situation. Y'all did that on purpose to make Shannon look bad. For you and Gina to sit there and act like you guys had some moral obligation to tell Heather anything is a joke. So of course, here comes Queen Heather interjecting to say how she really felt. So she's like, let's get to the core of why I was really upset. I felt betrayed by you, Shannon. You had ample time to come to me and talk to me about this one-on-one, but you didn't. So I'm looking like, okay, but Heather, you're a walking contradiction because you just said a few minutes ago, this was 20 years ago, who cares? Now it's, this could have damaged my husband and his profession. Which one is it? Is it, it happened 20 years ago, we don't care, that's old news? Or is this, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing in the world? Pick a side and stay there. You just get off giving Shannon a hard time, and that's why you were so quick to be angry with her. So Shannon's like, Heather, here's what you're not gonna do. Sis, I know you. I have known you for about 8-9 years now. And I know that had I talked to you, called you up, whether in private, in public, with the cameras on or off, you would have blown up at me. So Heather's trying to deny it. And I'm like, Heather, we know your personality type. You don't take that kind of news in the best way. And you would have been mad at Shannon had she told you in private with the cameras off. This situation for Shannon was a lose-lose. And if I were her, I would have never brought it up in the first place. So now Andy goes on to ask Heather, why was she only mad at Shannon and not mad at Emily or Gina? So Heather says, well, I was mad at them too. I was angry at all three of them, but they reached out to me immediately to make it right. So Shannon's like, hold on now, sis. I was texting you every day, but you ignored me. And again, Heather gets off on giving Shannon a hard time. And I actually went back and watched some older seasons of when Shannon first joined the show, and I'm looking at things a bit differently. I think I misjudged Shannon. I think that Heather felt a type of way. Maybe she felt like she had some competition because Shannon was just as rich when she was with David. Because remember that Shannon and David's home together was like 18,000 square feet. They had a basketball court, a lemon garden. It was gorgeous. And I think that Heather is that type where she wants to be the only fabulously wealthy person in the room. She can't stand when another woman is on her level or above. Just a theory, I could be off, but watching older seasons has me thinking like, maybe I was too quick to judge Shannon and say that she was jealous, this, that, and the third. Maybe Heather really was a mean girl to her. Sometimes it's good to go back and watch older seasons of a franchise because you'll notice things that you didn't pick up the first time you watched it. And let's call a spade a spade. Heather gets off on Gina and Emily sweating her. Let's move this recap along, okay? Because I could stay here forever analyzing Heather and Gina and Emily. So now Heather gets nasty and she goes for the jugular. She tells Shannon, I protected you. I protected you when I knew that David was out here cheating on you. I was like, did she really just say that? Shannon was livid. You could tell that Shannon wanted to fly off that couch and slap Heather. That was evil. So now Shannon says, look, I just didn't know that was the same girl. Like, I'm so sorry. It's 100% my fault. I said, Shannon, don't apologize anymore. You didn't mean anything by it. You had a question. It turned out to be the same woman. You had no idea that Gina and Emily would be so cruel and go back and tell Heather before you got a chance to tell Heather. And a big high five to the viewer who asked Heather, where did she get off talking and threatening Shannon like she was a mob boss? And you saw how Heather could barely apologize. She was like, well, I just felt like, when you mess with my family, I just go off. It's like, no, sis, you were dead ass wrong. You were talking to her like you were in The Godfather or something. Like, who the hell are you? And my heart broke when Shannon started sobbing, when she was like, I was just so scared when you said that to me because, I have 3 daughters. I'm a full-time single mom. I don't get any help. And I thought that you were going to sue me. And if I were Shannon, I would have taken it a step further. I would have fallen down off that couch. I would have been sobbing. I would have had production come and pick me up. I would have given an Academy Award performance. I would have made Heather felt like shit for that. Because what Heather did was just so cruel. And Heather was just sitting there looking so stupid. And when she was like, you know what, Shannon, I understand. I would never sue you. I just said that because I was angry. But please know that I would have never sued you. That was the last thing on my mind. I said, okay, so then why were you fake threatening her? You sitting there saying, that's not a threat. That is a promise. And you are very blessed that you're on OC and not another franchise. Because had you threatened somebody else like that, girl, stop. you would have been getting some new veneers. To all of y'all who were determined to get me to stop liking Heather Dubrow, y'all won, because when I tell you I am officially over her, like, I was just too through with her. I really was. So now we see Emily's montage. We can skip over that. It was boring. I don't care. Then we get to Gina's portion. Again, it was boring. I don't care. And then we close out part one with them discussing Heather and Gina's friendship and Shannon and Gina's feud. Heather and Gina talking about how they're so close and, you know, how they became fast friends because they're both New Yorkers. Again, absolute BS. It's an ego stroke for Heather and a social step up for Gina. So it's a beneficial relationship for both parties. So now they get to talking about Shannon and Gina and the demise of their friendship. So Shannon brings up how it was really sweet of Gina's parents to thank her for getting the attorney to help Gina out in her DUI case. So Gina interjects, she's talking stupid, talking in circles, and then Shannon says, look, I promised you I would stop talking about the DUI case. You know, that's done. My lips are sealed. Now Emily interjects, and Shannon is like, girl, for the last time, this is between Gina and myself. See your way out of this conversation. It's not about you right now. So Shannon goes on to say that when she was going through a horrible divorce, she did not have the support of friends like how Gina did. So now Gina's like, oh my gosh, like, shut up. You had Vicky and Tamra. Y'all were the Tres Amigas. And it's like, Gina, your jealousy just keeps showing because you were really pressed to be a part of that group. And you're probably still holding a grudge against Shannon that you were never part of the cool group. Because why are you bringing them up? At the end of the day, Shannon has been there for you during your time of need, but yet you have not been there for her time of need. It is what it is. Own up to it. Shannon has taken you on shopping sprees on Rodeo Drive. She hired a lawyer for you that got your butt out of jail. She's done a lot for you. Okay? I'm sure she's paid for countless dinners because we all know that you don't have two nickels to rub together. So the least that you can say to Shannon is thank you. So we open up part two with Shannon and Gina still going back and forth. Shannon says that it was very egotistical and cruel of Gina to say that she doesn't have any friends. She's like, who says that? So now Gina brings up how Shannon's boyfriend John said that she needs to go and F herself. So she's like, the fact that you would allow your boyfriend to speak about your friends like that is crazy, and I feel worried for you. So Shannon's like, can you stop it? Like, why would you even say that? He was upset. You know, he didn't mean it. He was just upset because I was upset. Now I said, Gina, you really like to just throw little things out there. You know what you're doing when you say, I'm worried for you. Let's stop. You know good and damn well that John was not saying anything threatening saying that. Also, he said, go F yourself about you, not to you. People have the right to vent. And Shannon apologizing on behalf of her boyfriend. I was like, no, Shannon, I would not have said that. I would say, yeah, John doesn't like you. He said, go F yourself. And he meant it. I am all for somebody standing up for their spouse or their girlfriend or their partner. I wasn't mad at John saying that at all. He was pissed. So now Andy starts asking Shannon if she ever said that Gina has an overinflated ego. So Shannon says, yes, I said that because she was saying that I was jealous of her, and anybody who says that, obviously they have an inflated ego. Shannon was very nice in her response because I definitely would have said, oh yeah, I said that. Because what a joke for Gina of all people with her broke self to think that anybody's jealous of her. She obviously has a very big ego for her to think any such thing. I would have said it just like that. So now Gina and Shannon finally come to some sort of resolution. Gina says that she just jokes around a lot and that's her sense of humor, but she's going to work on it going forward. I'm like, Gina, all you need to say is, I'm sorry. So now they circle back to Noella and they start discussing why Noella had beef with everybody except for Shannon this season. So now Andy brings up the bad blood between Noella and Dr. Jen. Dr. Jen says that she had met Noella a few times and she thought that Noella was kind of pretentious. So now Andy reads a viewer question asking Noella, why did Noella judge Jen so hard for taking a poorly lit selfie on Instagram? So Noella says, no, it wasn't because of that. It was because she was acting like we were great friends and she was tagging me in her med spa. And she had one post where she said, thank you to all my clients, and she tagged me in it. And I had heard things about her med spa and I didn't want to associate with it. I was like, now, despite Dr. Jen being super boring, don't try to bring that lady's business down. That was just so evil of her to add that in there about, yeah, you know, because I had heard things about her med spa and I don't want to be associated with it. I'm like, don't do that. Dr. Jen is going through enough. Like, leave that lady alone. The way OC is really a very unlikable cast, except for Shannon. I'm like, damn, I really can't stand anybody. But anyhow, Dr. Jen and Noella keep going back and forth. And now we get to Noella versus Heather. So Andy reads another viewer question asking Heather, why does she hate Noella so much? So Heather says, first of all, I don't hate anybody. I don't hate Noella. I just have some issues with her because first she called me a fake ass bitch. Then she comes to my house and calls me a narcissist. So then she says, I mean, it's my studio, it's my house. Of course I'm going to have pictures of myself, like, don't you, to Andy? So Andy says, well, yeah, I have pictures of myself all over, but I'm also a narcissist. Like, we all are. Anybody on TV has a bit of that in them. So now everybody starts laughing. Even Heather has to admit that, yeah, she is a bit of a narcissist to a point. And Heather, you for sure are. You have a very big ego. So now Heather and Noella start going at it. Heather keeps calling Noella a liar, and Noella is. We can admit to that. She is good and nutty. So Noella's like, Heather, just stop it. Just stop it. Don't make me say it. Don't make me say it. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say it. So everybody's like, say what? Like, girl, just spill it. So Noella's like, I didn't want to talk about it, but since, you want to do it, then let's go. But I know more details about the Nicole James lawsuit. I was on the other line when she was on the phone with you. And a quick side note, why wasn't Nicole at the reunion? And why didn't we get a clear explanation about why she stopped filming so abruptly? But anyhow, Noella goes on to say that she was on the phone with Nicole, and Nicole told her that she sued Terry because she was botched, and she received a lot of money in the settlement. So Heather says, let's clear some things up, shall we? When somebody receives a settlement from a doctor that they have sued, it gets reported to the California Medical Board. Like, there is no hiding a settlement. Let's get that clear immediately. So Noella's like, well, that's not true because there are NDAs in place. So Heather's like, that is 1,000% not true. Then Heather says that she sued and then dropped the case. It's over and done with. So pretty much there was no settlement. So now Andy piggybacks off what Heather is saying, and he's like, well, what you're saying is that A, if she didn't drop the case, then you guys wouldn't be friends today, and B, Terry would have remembered her. So then Heather says, exactly. She goes on to say, and I know that me and Terry are wealthy, but don't you think that I would have remembered a check of that kind of amount being cut? So now Noella interjects yet again, and she's like, well, you strong-armed her. So Heather's like, no, I did not. Like, what are you saying? So now Noella says, well, you told her not to talk about this. So Heather's like, well, obviously I don't want a lawsuit about my husband being out there. Like, it's not the best news in the world, but you guys brought it up. It was on the show. So now, of course, this argument leads into the next argument about the infamous accusations about Miss Heather Dubrow yoking some grown-ass men up against the wall at her house. So Noella says, well, I saw you do it with your own eyes. Everybody says, Noella, the story has changed 5 times. Andy even chimes in and says, Noella, I can assure you that if Heather had slammed anybody up against the wall, the cameras would have gotten that footage and we would have shown it. I said, Noella, just save yourself the embarrassment and just quit while you're ahead. Shut up. You know you didn't see anything. You already said that you had heard that Heather had yoked somebody up against the wall. Now you're saying you saw it with your own eyes. Like, just stop it. And had you seen it with your own eyes, you would have taken out your phone and you would have started recording and you would have shown it to Bravo. So please stop. And then Andy bringing up the whole card game. Was it pornography? Was it not? I was just so over it. I had forgotten all about that argument. I was like, I just don't care anymore. I was annoyed with the whole Noella-Heather feud from the beginning. I thought that Noella was very aggravating from the beginning. So I was really just over it. And then when Andy brought up the feuds between Noella and Emily and Noella and Gina, I was like, okay, I mean, it's the same thing. It's clear that Noella is the issue. It can't be everybody else. When the whole group has an issue with you, 9 times out of 10 is you. Noella crying and saying that these women were a sisterhood for her. You don't go on to any reality TV show looking for sisterhood or brotherhood. People are there for fame, to raise their social standing, okay, having a platform for the first time ever, and to get a check, a big check. They are not there for friendship. Friendship, if it does come, is secondary. Now we move on to the Dr. Jen portion, and quite frankly, this was the only time that Dr. Jen spoke during this entire reunion. Again, Dr. Jen, nice woman, but the personality of a doorknob. She brought nothing this entire season. And hopefully, Lord willing, this is her first and final season. Andy starts reading some viewers' questions, asking if her husband, Ryan, actually brings home any money. And the way I could not stop laughing, I said, not everybody thinking that her husband is a deadbeat. So Dr. Jen says, yes, her husband isn't a complete deadbeat and a waste of space. He actually does make money with his business called Hawaiian Hideaway. So it's luxury vacation rentals, and he's bringing home something. So now Andy wants to know if she's still the breadwinner in the family or if Ryan is now taking over. And she says that, he's bringing home some good money and they're actually almost even. I said, I'll believe it when I see it. When I tell you that Andy was reading the shadiest questions directed towards Dr. Jen, because the next viewer question was, does Ryan love the dog, Dr. Puppers, more than he loves her? And did you guys notice how Dr. Jen didn't really answer the question? She just kind of laughed and then moved on. I was like, sis, that right there shows you that he doesn't really love you that much, because you kind of hesitated. Dr. Jen going on to say how watching the show back, it was therapeutic for both of them and how it's kind of helpful for their marriage. I didn't believe a word of it. I think that Dr. Jen is trying to save face. I just don't see her husband being interested in her. I don't see any romance. I don't see any chemistry between them. I think that she's the one who wants this marriage to work, and he has completely checked out. Then Andy reads a final viewer question directed at Dr. Jen, and the question goes on to ask, was Dr. Jen hurt when Ryan said that he was coming around to her, even though it was love at first sight on her end? So she says that she was a bit hurt about it, but that's his sense of humor. And I was like, there was nothing funny about that. To have a man say that he's coming around to you, like, absolutely not. I don't care what anybody says, but I think that there is a lot of truth to when older women would say, you know, the man has to love you more than you love him because that's the only way it'll work out and even out. I believe that. And I think that Dr. Jen always liked and loved Ryan more than he liked and loved her. And that's why their marriage is in shambles. But they end Dr. Jen's segment with her saying that she feels hopeful. And I said, well, that's good. At least somebody has hope, honey, because the rest of us see a train wreck. But if you like it, then God bless. So now Andy brings up the Aspen trip and how Noella and Heather got into a disagreement over the room situation. Because remember how Noella wanted the best room in the house and she used her father passing away as her way of getting the best room. And Emily said, you know, we actually wanted to do something nice for you. Like, we actually were going to give you the best room, but you don't let anybody, you know, have the chance to be nice to you. Like, you sort of demand stuff. So Noella makes an excuse saying that, well, nobody was talking to her in the group chat for a month, so she didn't know that they were going to do something nice for her. But still, Noella, some things are in poor taste to say. You know, you're already in a gorgeous home. The house was like over 10,000 square feet. All the rooms were gorgeous. So there was no bad room in the house. So for you to say, well, I deserve the best room because my dad just passed away, that's just in very poor taste. You just don't do things like that. Shannon interjects to jump to Noella's defense. And she says that in all fairness, Noella was dealing with the passing of her father. You know, he just passed away 4 days ago. So she was just dealing with that pain. And she takes a dig at Gina because she says, you know, when somebody dies, that's not a shit happens. And remember in one of the last episodes, Gina said, you know, I don't care anymore. I'm tired of having sympathy for Noella. Like, you know, shit happens. Like, everybody, you know, has bad things happen to them. And I was really surprised that Andy did not get on Gina for her saying that. And although I don't like Noella, that was very messed up for Gina to say. So now Andy brings up Noella's father, and we find out that he was a famous weatherman, and her parents had a pretty strained relationship from the beginning. So Noella starts talking about how they had a very strained relationship. He wasn't around, and she used to send him her report cards because she got good grades in school, and they would come back in the mail unopened. And then she brings up how she learned how to play golf because he loved playing golf. And that was actually like the one time he would talk to her. So now Emily interrupts and she brings up how her dad actually came to one of her baseball games because she played baseball when she was younger and her dad loved baseball. I was like, Emily, that's nice and all, but they're talking about Noella right now. And it's kind of rude for you to interrupt and tell, you know, your story. So now Noella shares her last conversation that she had with her dad and how he gave her some great advice about being Black and how he was proud of her. So now Noella is super emotional. Everybody's trying to comfort her. And then Jen says, hey, Noella, I just want to let you know, like, I feel so sorry for you. I know that we've had a rocky history, but please know that my heart aches for you because I know what that's like losing a dad. And then we find out that Dr. Jen took the MCAT the day after her dad passed away. And we have to get off of this real quick because I can't talk about this without my eyes welling up because I think about my dad. Like, he just passed away. It'll be a year, 2 weeks from now. Okay, he died May 15th of 2021. So yeah, the year is coming up. Time flies, doesn't it? But anyhow, let's move off of that before I start crying. So now we end this reunion with everybody saying something nice about each other. And now it is time for their pineapple champagne toast. And Real Housewives of OC Season 16 reunions part 1 and 2 are over. Y'all, like I said earlier, I thought that it was a very lackluster reunion. A lot of questions remained unanswered for me. I would have loved to have found out more about Nicole and if her and Heather were still friends. You know, are they still talking? Like, I wanted to know a lot more about that. I wanted to know, why did she leave the show? you know, she was supposed to be full-time, then she was demoted to part-time. Like, I want to know all of that, and we didn't get to find out about that. Again, it was a lackluster reunion. Shannon came out smelling like roses, and she's that girl of this franchise. Period. Point blank. Going forward, I'm gonna need some serious cast changes. Keep Shannon, keep Heather. Noella, I'm on the fence about. Although I didn't like her, she did bring a lot of drama and a lot of frustration. Dr. Jen can go. Emily and Gina hit the road jack. Like, they can go. I've wanted them to go since they got on this show. They are not Housewives material, especially Gina. But y'all, let me know what you guys thought about the reunion. Thank you guys so much for watching my double recap. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.